Sneaky. How are you?
I'm good. Just realized that. I thought Poncho was gonna be doing stuff away from the house.
Oh, she's okay.
She had the day off.
Gotcha. By the way, FYI, there shouldn't be anyone. We're currently live on YouTube, like over here. So anything we say could be captured.
Could be on.
Could be captured.
Yeah, well, I won't stop saying.
That's right.
I gotta go get ready for my next Zoom appointment.
Okay.
But yeah, we can chat about all kinds of stuff after.
Mumble. Talk about talk, of course. I also just met with Scott Taylor to talk about their peer review stuff.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, we planned it some time ago, so that was sort of our opportunity to meet and follow up. Good conversation. And, you know, we talked about some of the ways in which this will be implemented, including, you know, just sort of like, well, it sounds like from his department, like he thinks folks are on board with this as an approach. But I think he's also cognizant of the fact that it's possible there might be some voices that feel better or worse about certain things, right? You know, personalities. And with that said, but like, he still thinks there's going to be lots of things, you know, based on that document they put together, that's sort of like, it's an option to do this, you know, as a candidate or other things. So, you know, given that it's an option, then all of a sudden we're not talking about big policy changes or things like that. He's also, you know, going to point out that he has been putting this together in consultation with us as well. You know, not that I'm opposed to this, but we're a part of that for them. And certainly,
I think that's good.
Yeah. So yeah, it was good. Good to talk with him. And I guess he's also 2 years into serving on promotion and tenure, so I got a little bit of his perspective on that as well. Because I think, you know, when we talk about peer review, I want to know about that kind of piece, because that's
a big part of it. Hear more about what he said there.
Yeah. Well, we can talk more.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh, how are you?
Good. It's nice to see you in this, not in the tiny circle on.
That's right. And I will say, as I do whenever we begin these sessions, there's no one else yet in the meeting room. However, I have already begun our live stream on YouTube. I do not anticipate and can confirm right now that no one is viewing it on YouTube.
Okay.
But that said, our conversation is a part of the ether right now.
All right.
I don't know that, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if we've really met or interacted. Like I've seen your name and everything like that, but I don't know. That's how it goes sometimes, I guess.
Definitely. And how has the week been going?
Pretty good. I mean, it's busy, it's full, but it's been pretty good. And you know, we've had our synchronous sessions and things like that, and you know, all things considered, you know, with very few exceptions, individuals have known what to do ahead of time. And, you know, like I haven't bumped into a lot of last minute questions and things like that, which would be, you know, it's always complicated to manage that, but no, it's been good. It's been good.
Glad to hear it. And I think our group, so I don't know, I'll just tell you, we're planning to put people in breakout rooms.
Okay.
So I was wondering if you could grant me hosting privileges so that I can do all of that kind of wrangling.
We're happy to do that. We're also happy to have our staff take care of it if you prefer. But if, you know, certainly if you want to handle it, it's all you.
Okay.
Let's see. And I think as well, we'll record the session. So even if I grant, you host status, I still get notification of a recording after it's recorded on my account. So
Yes, I think that's true.
yeah. Otherwise, please send it our way. I also hear, separate from ACT-related businesses, I hear that you might be doing some work with us up here at Colby Bates and Bowdoin, potentially with a
that's
sort of
right.
workship type thing this winter, and that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
excited.
know if I've mentioned it to that group, but I've been meaning to, I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm like, I know some of these people. So
Yeah, no. There's yeah, it would be fun. Of course I would think it would be more fun in person, but I'll take what I can get.
of course. So how have you been lately? How's your semester? Or would you prefer we just don't talk about the semester? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, things are chugging along, and I think the only thing that I find odd about this setup is that I am jumping from this kind of an activity to like some more routine activities, whereas if we were doing this live, like there would be more sort of there's less of the like jumping from audience to task to there's less of that kind of switching going on, but it's fine. I'm comfortable. We have a good workspace set up. Everybody's plugging along in their own work in our house, and
Good.
no, we're all well. That's like the most important thing. So
Yeah, I mean, it has been, I'm I'm not someone with kids. I have a partner, but so the transitioning into like a remote type of work has not been very disruptive in that regard. But I do know, I'm probably in the minority of individuals who have moved to remote and not had, lots of people all on top of one another.
right.
All right, I see. Tasita is joining us. Hello.
Hi, Jordan.
How are you?
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. I know, as I was just saying to Vijay, I feel like these are names I circle around so often, and I guess now halfway meeting, whatever we might call Zoom. But
I know.
good to see you. Good to interact with you.
Yes, you too. Vijay, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Dina.
Well, you're all school spirited here.
You're
Oh,
muted.
you're muted right now. Yeah.
It's actually because I couldn't get into my office right now. And so I'm in the bedroom. I was like, all right, this will probably look better.
You're in a field of beautiful flowers and it's sunshiny.
It's way nicer weather than it actually is right now. Although, yeah, yesterday was spring-like.
That's nice.
We got to the nice weather as long as we can, because that's the only time you can. I mean, once it's indoors, I then lose all the outside restaurants that we're at right now, where it's like there's only a few that are actually like away from all the undergrads and not overly populated, which is concerning, because people are inside here too now. They're all like they're drinking inside, eating inside.
Wow.
It's bad because Michigan now, like all of her executive power was taken away. So we'll see what happens.
Is that where the kidnapping plot is? Was that your guy?
Yes, I am very concerned a little. Of course, he did not condemn it at all. He actually tweeted like attacking the governor after they revealed the
I saw that.
Yeah.
I will say, I mentioned this to VG that though we don't have additional folks in our room here, we are live streaming on YouTube right now. I don't believe we have any viewers there, but there.
Got it.
We're fine. Nothing we have discussed. Just want us
Good to know.
know.
Good to remember.
Let's see. And I got someone else in the waiting room. Let me just check to confirm yes, Jennifer is here. So let me bring her in as well. I heard about that as well, Dina. I'm originally from Michigan, and
Oh, really? I forgot about that. You are.
so yes, listening intently. Whenever there's talk of kidnapping a governor, I'd like to know what's going on.
It's a
Mhm.
bit concerning.
Yeah. Mhm.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Jen. You're muted, by the way.
Hi, sorry, thank you. No, I thought it said full, and so I was about to text everybody and be like, I can't get in.
No, just a wait room to before we get everyone started. And I see Leslie
Good.
just joining as well, so let me let Leslie.
Good to see you all this morning.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Two, although I can't.
Jennifer, let me ask, where are you? Somewhere that it's morning.
Yeah, I am. I'm in Monterey area, so California. Where are you at, Jordan?
I'm in Maine, so we've gone.
Ah.
Corner.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
It was really nice to meet you.
Good to meet you as well.
Hi, Leslie.
Oh, hi, sorry, here with my coffee. I'm still waking up. It's still morning. Good morning, everybody.
It's morning for her too.
Sasha is
Oh,
also
back.
joining us. There. All right, so yeah, Leslie and Sasha and Dina and Jennifer, and Viji and Tasita. We've got all of our authors. We got a couple of folks in the waiting room.
Jordan, it's Vigi.
Viji, thank you.
How many times a day do you say that?
I appreciate it. I want to figure out how I will remember that.
Oh, well, I won't say it since we're live streaming, but a grad student friend of mine had told me years ago that it sounds like a word that sometimes it's a bad word, but it's like a version of that. So like Friggy, for example.
Viji. Okay. I think
She was endlessly amused by it because it was not how she thought of me, but it somehow helped her with my name.
I also think it's really helpful how you put it in on your name for the
Yeah.
Zoom.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah, see, Jordan, you have a cheat.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Zoom has been immensely helpful with my poor memory for names. Okay. Yeah, a couple of folks in
Also,
the
Vicky, that was such a diplomatic way of telling that joke via live stream. Good work.
Excuse me.
So before, I guess before we start adding folks in, is everybody in our group comfortable with their parts? Does anybody want to run through anything? Or I'm going to just go quickly through the slides just to make sure it's showing up okay on your end. So I've got it on my screen. Okay, this is a good one. I think I should just be able to click through. Is this the correct? This is all looking good on your end?
Yeah, we can see it moving forward.
Okay. And then I know that there was one more slide, but it looks like it's hidden with our emails in it. So this is what I have available to show.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Okay. So then for closing, because I'm going to close out, there won't be the slide then with our contact info.
I can put it up. I can unhide it.
Okay. Okay. Just
think
as a
Yeah,
wrap up.
because when I talked to Sita, I was like, oh, you can say, oh, if you have any more questions, you can contact us here. But I didn't realize that was a hidden slide.
We also, all of our contact information is on the STP diversity page. And so that was, I think, one resource we were thinking about getting
That's right.
as a
That's
reminder.
why I said
Yes.
not to put it on that first slide, that introduction slide.
Okay. So I can mention that. I can mention that for closing.
That's right.
Mhm. Got it.
Then Jordan, have you been doing any breakouts in these sessions?
often, yes.
Okay. And what are you finding in terms of sizing? Are people good with about 4 to 5 in a group or?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, it depends on what you as authors want, what you think makes sense. But that said, I think that is a very reasonable size. I will say when we've gone on our very low end, we sometimes bump into issues, like if we are trying to get 2 or 3 in a room, for example, if one person goes, but then there was supposed to be one more and that other person doesn't go for whatever, then someone says, hey, what do I do? So I think if you're at 4 or 5, you're certainly fine there.
Yeah, the one thing I've observed is that when they're really short breakout times and you have 4 to 5 people, not everyone gets a chance to speak. So it's if we don't have a really high turnout, we could consider doing less people in the rooms, capping it at like 3, so that when we come, so that everybody gets a chance to at least share with their group. We don't necessarily need to call on every group when we come back together.
Mhm. Mhm.
Let's see, let me at least make some of you co-hosts for now. And before we begin, I'll make Viji our host, and then I'll request that you make me co-host. It's funny how that works. Like all of a sudden I toss away all of my capabilities on Zoom.
All your power.
I'm not someone who generally likes to harbor a lot of power, but I want to make sure that, if there's something I got to sort out, that I can do it. So that said, is there anyone among our author groups that would like co-host status? I mean, it can be all of you, it can be one of you, whatever. Any preferences?
Was it Leslie who was gonna help out with, or Jen that's gonna help out with the breakout rooms and stuff? So
Well,
I don't think it was me.
I'll be back up just in case something happens, but I think that I'm not sure if co-hosts have the ability to create the breakout rooms, but I can at least help with anything Zoom wise, I hope.
And will you keep popping into some of the breakout rooms is still the plan, right? Or I guess it'll depend on how many people show up.
yeah, well, we're gonna be randomly assigned with everyone else, and so we may have to be reassigned if we end up with like 3 of us in the same
One
room.
Right, yeah.
Welcome to those of you who are joining.
Lindsay and Tom.
And Tom.
Both
taking photos. I'm taking photos, so I tend to use my STP logo.
So modest. So let's see. Let me fill in. Lindsay.
Looking up like it's almost like a Brady window, like
I know.
glare above you.
Mhm.
So let's see, for Lindsay and Tom, Vijaya said that she wants to serve as the person who will host and then handle things like breakout rooms, which I am happy to hand that off. So let me make Lindsay a co-host as well, and then in just a moment, I will relinquish my host rights. Someone please make me a co-host. That would be delightful. All right. Did you want to just confirm everything looked good on your screen as host, able to do the things you need to do?
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up the breakout rooms and just see what that looks like here. I'm not seeing.
Folks, I'm going to take a snapshot. So look at the camera and I'll tell you 3, 2, 1. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. I like to try to take at least one photo where
I'm never sure where I'm looking too. I'm like, look at the camera, look at the slide, look at the people.
I know, I'm like, my eyes are gonna go this way and then this way.
That's why I'm bad at selfies also.
Oh, I hate selfies.
Oh.
I'm going to make a special issue of the newsletter, and I just want to use the worst possible photos of everyone I can find.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
We should be
a hero.
mid-word, so our mouths are like this.
I
I ask, are you all still seeing the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, the-
Just the first one, just the
Okay.
first.
Yeah, because when I navigate away to do the breakout rooms, I can't see the slides anymore. So I want to just make sure that you're still
Yeah.
viewing them.
It's
Just the,
showing up.
just the title though.
Right. I think that's exactly where I am. So I just have to figure out how to get back and forth between the breakout view and the slideshow mode.
Are the words on the slides showing up? Oh, now it's looking okay, because it looked like there was like duplication of the words, but it's looking fine now.
I didn't see any duplication.
Oh yeah, I saw it, but it's better now. I see what you mean, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, also, Viji, quick question. You're the one driving the slides the whole time, right?
Other hosts, I think, should be able to. No, maybe
No,
not.
because you're the one
because I've-
sharing the screen.
Yeah, because I've got my desktop showing. Okay. Yes.
So what would
I-
be the
there's-
best? What would be the best way for all of us to like signal our transitions so that you know when to switch slides, so we're not being like awkward every single time?
Well, would one of you want to show your slides so that I won't have that and I can manage the breakouts and all that work? Is that okay?
So another co-host to share their screen.
For the slides.
I can share if you want me to.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. That might work a little bit better because then when I'm doing the Zoom breakouts, I don't have to worry about people not seeing my screen.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Unless you have a lot of monitors, I have found that it's definitely best to spread out the responsibilities when possible. So I'm just really pumped. I feel like we should give Viji like a gold star for the fact that she's doing the breakout rooms. This is the first time that our presenters have not asked us to do it. So I'm pumped because I get to take notes the whole time.
Oh, Lindsay, you're such a student. Pumped to take notes.
And they're going to be like artistic notes too. Was that you, Lindsay, where you always post the pictures and they look so good?
Jordan, are you able to admit people in the room?
Not currently. Viji, I'm not a co-host. Would you be able to make me a co-host and then I can bring people in?
No one ever made you go. You really
Yeah.
did give up the power.
I was almost kind of reveling in it for just a minute.
Viji, I think you also need to make Dina a co-host so she can share her screen and or some others of us.
All right, I'm trying to figure out why.
I also have only done this with PowerPoint, so hold on a second. It should be the same.
Let me start with Jordan first.
I think I'm going to stop doing my classes in Blackboard Collaborate because I don't like when I share my screen, I can no longer see my students.
And I'll say to this group that I have to depart about halfway through. A mid-semester feedback session requires my attention. That said, we've got a whole team of folks just raring to go. Plus, we've got Lindsay and Jen and Tom here. You all, anything I can do, you all can do better. So we'll be good to go. Let's see, would you like me to let folks in, say a quick welcome, and then hand it over to you all? Or is there anything else we'd like to sort out before we begin?
I think
Dina,
I've
can you share the slides and put them up before we have people come in?
Yep, that's what I'm
working on it.
Okay.
Okay, and then Viji, did you
Does that
also
work?
have a question? or-
There you go.
We see your screen, but are you in a full screen of, well,
yes. Is it full screen for you or it's not?
well, it's inside of a
See the
browser. Which I
URL.
don't normally see it that way.
Oh, for me, it's like literally taking up the entire screen. Hold on a second. Because I've only used this with PowerPoint usually. Maybe I have to share Google Chrome instead of the.
No, go up to the upper right and you should have an option to view. I can see the screen and I can see all of you.
Yeah.
Jordan, are you able to admit now?
If you wish, I'm able to admit. Yeah,
Oh,
but
I
yes, I have that capability.
Is that
Okay, that's
better?
what I was checking on. Okay.
Is that better or no?
It's still the same.
It's
Oh,
okay.
weird, 'cause I just changed
Yeah, it's
the-
fine. It's fine.
I want to
Yeah, we
test,
should
Dina,
definitely
if you
let
can move
people
forward
in.
a slide.
What'd you say?
You might want to test and see, make sure you can move forward a
Yeah,
slide.
that's what I was also gonna check. There we go.
Yeah, all right,
Okay,
it works.
so as
We're
long as
good.
we can see the whole slide.
Yeah,
It's
test it out. I
weird,
think
then
you
let
can
me
just do it on your own. In the, you
It's
go
weird than
on your screen, go up to the view, to the upper right.
Mhm.
I might suggest not altering the view at this point. We're at 2 minutes after and a good amount of folks in the waiting room. I think this is just fine. What do you all think?
It
Yeah,
looks
let's
great.
go.
Okay, let me let folks in, say a quick welcome, and then hand it over to our team.
Sounds good.
All right, we've let folks in. Thank you all so much for joining us for our Friday synchronous session for the virtual annual conference on teaching. I'm really excited to have our colleagues here presenting on their topic, highlighting diversity and inclusive excellence in job and promotion materials. We've got a large author team, and I'll let them take it away and introduce themselves here in just a moment. So the floor is yours. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Hi, everybody. We are so glad that you're able to hang out with us for the next hour or so. We are the STP Diversity Committee, and we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves one by one, tell you a little bit about where we are in terms of our career stage, kind of what brought us here today. But you can meet all of us, and then we will dive into exactly what we're going to be doing with our time together. So that being said, hi, everybody. My name is Leslie Burnson. I am a teaching faculty member at the University of Southern California. This is my third year as a faculty member. And in addition to serving on the STP Diversity Committee, I am also, as a shameless plug, I'm the new chair of STP's DEI Award. So if anybody's interested in getting involved in serving on the committee, I would be thrilled to answer your questions about that. So feel free to ask me afterwards. But it's my shameless plug for the day. I was most recently, since I'm a junior faculty member, I was most recently a job candidate. And that's kind of what brings me here today and brings me to the table. And I'll go ahead and let everybody else introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
So we're going to go around the slide in order as we appear on the slide. So I'm Sasha Cervantes, and I am an associate professor at Governor State University. It's just south of Chicago. I am a tenured faculty member, and I'm coming to this panel as someone who has not only served on multiple faculty search committees at 3 different institutions, but I've also chaired a number of those search committees where I've been charged with developing the interview questions. So I'm going to bring that sort of perspective to this discussion.
I'm Dina Gohar. I am also teaching faculty early career. It's my 3rd year at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I am coming from the perspective of job candidates recently as well.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lovell. I'm coming from California State, Monterey Bay. I'm a 5th year faculty member here in the junior faculty. I'm on the tenure track, and I'm also coming from the perspective of most recently kind of going through the job application and then kind of moving toward tenure, getting closer.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Vijay Sathi. I am in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I'm coming from the perspective of someone who I've been teaching for 12 years now. I'm on a non-tenure track. And so I'm coming from the perspective of someone who's thinking about presenting your materials and demonstrating your work related to diversity and inclusion in your dossiers.
And I'm Tasita Tormala. I'm an associate professor at Palo Alto University, also on a teaching track. I also am faculty director of equity and inclusion. So I'm also bringing that perspective in, as well as having chaired a search committee and been a part of the reviewing of faculty candidates. Welcome.
Thanks, everybody. So as a reminder, we come from a bunch of different perspectives, whether we were recently job candidates, whether we are serving on review committees, search committees, what have you, right? So hopefully, no matter where you are in the process, fingers crossed, there will be something for you in the next hour or so. But feel free, again, if anything that any of us said, kind of raised questions for you, feel free to ask us and we'd be more than happy to do that and answer those for you. That being said, I think Vijay is going to cover objectives and give you a roadmap of where we're going.
Thank you, Leslie. So we thought we would start by just defining some key terms that we're going to be working with today and some guiding principles for writing diversity statements. And what we wanted to do was actually use this session while you're here with us to help brainstorm ways in which we might help demonstrate this material in either in our applications or just thinking about ways in which we might bring our work into these statements. And then the next steps. So we're just going to set some ground rules here for participation. We ask that in the main session that you remain muted unless you have a question or a comment. We're a small enough group. Feel free to unmute yourself or to type in the chat window. And I've also opened up a back channel that you can use at any time. I'll paste it into the chat window shortly. And it's my Poll Everywhere account, which is why it says I love stats. I make my students type that in regularly. So you're gonna just, if you have questions or comments, and this is an upvote, so if you see something show up there that you would also like to see discussed, feel free to upvote it and we'll bring it in. And then we're gonna give you some instructions for the breakout work soon.
All right, so before we get started in terms of diving into the workshop, we think it's important to talk about what we mean by the terms that we're using, right? And rather than provide like a textbook definition for these terms, what we thought would be maybe hopefully a little bit more valuable than that would be to address some kind of bigger picture guiding principles that inform how I think about this work, how we think about this work, and we think are important for everyone to think about now that we have you here. So a couple of kind of just big picture issues that my co-authors will get into in a little bit more detail. Number one is that diversity doesn't come at the expense of excellence. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. Some of you may have heard, possibly in any number of meetings, I know I have, that people say, oh, we can't sacrifice diversity for the sake of excellence, as if those are two mutually exclusive goals. We're here to tell you that they are not, and you can and should strive for both. So to the extent that you can avoid any such framing in any discussions you have, or if you are a member of a search committee, for example, and you hear someone say that, being able to respond to those kind of comments in a very specific and informed way, I think is a really helpful thing to guide this kind of work. So that's one important thing to keep in mind is, and that's specifically why we framed it this way, is diversity and excellence are not mutually exclusive by any means whatsoever, is one important point to keep in mind. Another important point to keep in mind is how we think about diversity. Some people will think about diversity and think of representation as the starting point and as the ending point. And I encourage all of you to maybe think a little bit bigger than that if you can. One of the things that guides my teaching, and I say this as much to my students, is to think about, I have these things that I deliver to my students. I call them my bad teacher speeches, where I ask them to think about, I mean, it's so unfortunate, but everyone has probably had a bad teacher they can think about that has said something to them that they remember decades later, right? In some cases, the things that teachers say to them go along the lines of, you are not a math person, you are not a science person, this is not for you, right? And very often, those kinds of comments fall along racialized or gender-based lines, right? That being said, rather than thinking of your role as to maybe just merely promote representation, think about how you might, in your role as a teacher, be able to maybe undo some of that kind of damage that might have been done by your students' previous instructors. How can you not only help them learn material, but maybe reshape what they think about their own capabilities, right? That is a core aspect of, in my mind, promoting diversity. I think something we can all do in our role as instructors. Finally, last big point is to broaden your view again of diversity and inclusive excellence more broadly as not simply a box to be checked. Granted, we are at the end of this workshop, we're going to have amassed a pretty gigantic list of all of the different ways people might be able to accomplish this, and there will be check boxes. But that being said, think of those items, it's all about reframing. Think of those items as ways that you can improve your students' learning and maybe even their lives. Think of all of those lists and those check boxes as that kind of thing first, And then above and beyond that, then they are things that you can demonstrate in your job materials, in your promotion materials, because you cared about those things to begin with, not because you see them as a means to an end. And I think I'm gonna cut my speech right there. That's what I got to say about that. But I think it's important to set that kind of foundation first. And then I will turn it over to someone else to talk a little bit about the different ways we can demonstrate these commitments.
So how can we demonstrate our commitment? Thankfully, all parts of our job lend themselves to DEI. So through our teaching, research service, and mentoring. And we're going to go through some broad do's and don'ts. And actually we want to direct you to a handout. I think there's a link in the chat to that handout for you. We've got some broad do's and don'ts, and the first line of the handout is current action and relevance. And so we think it's really important for you to show how you use culturally responsive and inclusive pedagogies and adapt to diverse student needs. And make sure you don't say things like, I treat all students the same, or that you're colorblind, because the idea of a colorblind society is very well intentioned, but unfortunately leaves us without language to talk about bias and discuss race. And so it can actually end up upholding racism and denying the existence of systemic racism. And so I think it can be counterproductive. And I think I'm handing it over to Jen for the other tips.
All right, so just I need to make sure that everybody sees the link for the handout in the chat box. This handout is structured into a top section where there's tips for writing about diversity and inclusivity more broadly, and then there are going to be more job-specific areas right below. But Dina and I are talking about this top section around just general tips. And if you look on page 2, one of the tips that all of us really talked about as being important is going to be cultural humility. And a big part of cultural humility is first becoming aware of and acknowledging one's own identities and doing your own work, if you will. But then also it's about really seeking opportunities to learn about other groups, but not assuming ever that you've learned it all. And this is something that's important when you're writing about your work in a diversity statement. It's not saying that I did these things and therefore it makes me competent. Hopefully, most of you have been aware that it's a lifelong process. And so that's something that's really important to highlight in one's diversity statement and one's job promotion materials is the ways in which you're continually learning, ways in which you've learned, things you're doing like examples, but then also what you're going to do next. And so part of that cultural humility is reflection, which is that second row on the second page too. It's about reflecting on what one's done, what one can do to improve, kind of either challenges. And I think at least at my university, and I think most, the RTP, or Retention Tenure Promotion Committee, really appreciates reflection and really likes when we're able to say, here's something that we did and here's how we addressed it, and to show the growth. And so that it's not necessarily seen as a weakness if you're having challenges in one area. It's about how did you address it and how do you improving. And I think along with reflection and cultural humility, often also come this idea that you're seeking opportunities for professional development beyond what your even institution is able to provide. So the fact that you're able to go to conferences, go to sessions like this, go to other things that help to encourage your own growth. You can also seek out information from like the Minority Fellowship Program, the APA Minority Fellowship Program, Psychology Summer Institute. There's all these different programs out there, women's leadership groups that can give you an opportunity to promote your leadership skills, your awareness around these issues. And then you can talk about them in your essays about what you've done, what you've learned, and what you're going to do next. And then now we're going to get more into specifics. And so if you keep going to page 3, you'll see some of the specifics. This is a big handout, so just don't become overwhelmed. We're going to go through parts of it, and then you're going to have plenty of time to explore it in more depth, hopefully later today, and then in the future.
Thank you, Jennifer. So Dina and Jen spoke about some of those broad strokes of what you could be doing, what you can say to communicate what you've done in the past. And Tasita's going to speak in a moment about some of those specifics about what you can get involved in, actions and behaviors, and what you can be doing moving forward. But I want to also speak from that perspective of someone who's on a committee, a hiring committee or a promotion committee. And when we look at people's applicants' materials, what is some specific things that you could be saying? And I want to say that one of the most significant things that I'm looking for is a sincere and authentic interest in DEI, right? And ways that applicants communicate that well is not by giving us a checklist of things that they've done, committees they've been involved in, or people that they may have mentored, right? But instead, one of the best ways that I see communicated a sincere interest in DEI and simultaneously a sincere interest in this university that they're applying to is when they've done their homework, when they've researched what initiatives and actions are being taken on our campus, what are the moves that our university is taking to promote DEI, and how do you see yourself contributing to those efforts? How can you get involved in the initiatives that we have on our campus? If you do that homework, you look into that and see what role you can play in that, it serves multiple functions. It not only shows that you have a sincere and ongoing interest and investment in DEI, but that you have a specific interest in our institution, which is so important in applications. You don't want generic applications, right? You should have not only unique statements and research statements and cover letters for every institution, but you should have unique DEI diversity statements for every institution that speak to the specific diversity initiatives of that institution. And in general, that same piece of advice that I'm hoping you're hearing regarding all the other aspects of your application materials is to remember to be forward thinking, that we keep saying that cliche of it's not just a box to check or a means to an end. It's not just what you've done in the past. In fact, the past is only significant in how it informs your present and your future goals. So here's what I've done in the past that's going to help me continue X efforts. And this is really a great way to frame things as well. If, say, you're a white male who doesn't have your own unique experiences on the receiving end to talk about, or maybe you've been in a very homogenous environment where you've had less opportunity to be involved in DEI explicitly, you can speak to that future goals and how you see yourself contributing. You can speak about past experiences where you realized, where you had those moments, those epiphanies, where you realized, as Jen spoke about, those moments where something went wrong and you had to address it. How have you had those past experiences, and how have those past experiences informed what you plan to do moving forward? So really keep your statements forward thinking, future thinking, and specific to the institution's initiatives that you're looking at applying to. So Tasita's going to speak about some of those specific actions and behaviors.
Yeah, thank you, Sasha. And actually, as I thought about it, I also am going to talk in more broad themes. So one, as we approach writing these kinds of statements and summarizing our equity and inclusion work, one important thing to recognize, of course, is that we're all coming to this work from different times, places, different social locations, different positionalities, different lived experiences. The research shows that folks with minoritized identities, because of their lived experiences, have had more time to navigate identity, and so tend to be higher in cultural responsiveness, in cultural awareness and knowledge and skills. And so just to kind of state at the outset that there are people in the space who have done a lot of equity and inclusion work in their past, and those who are still coming into it and growing into it. And so to piggyback on Sasha's point about growth, I think important in writing these kinds of statements and in positioning yourself in these 4 domains is taking the time to really think about where you are right now. And that's trying to take an objective look at your teaching, your mentorship, your service, your scholarship as it relates to cultural responsivity, as it relates to equity and inclusion, and then think about, where do I want to be and who do I want to be 5 years from now? And taking the time to situate yourself will then allow you to write this statement to come from a true and authentic place. And also in the process of writing the statement, define for yourself what you mean by diversity, equity, inclusion, or inclusive excellence. A second point is that in the same way that we differ in where we're coming from in terms of our own orientation to equity and inclusion and experience with it and capacity with it, so too are the folks who are reviewing your materials. So search committees, tenure and promotion committees, folks who are our senior colleagues who are reviewing us annually, deans, provosts. There's a range in terms of folks who see it as critically important in terms of scholarship, and a range in capacity to engage in culturally responsive pedagogy and research. And so navigating this can be difficult when this is work that's core to our sense of our professional selves. And so this point is really being true to your knowledge of the critical importance of this work. Spotlighting equity work, centering it in our statements about teaching, in our statements about our scholarship and mentorship, is also pushing our fields to be a more inclusive place. And as we know from this particular sociopolitical moment, sociohistorical moment, students are demanding this, and our field is recognizing our inequities. And so the work that we engage in too, in how we think about our pedagogy, our scholarship, is also moving the field forward. And then the last theme is spend time in your statements, certainly focused on the domains that align with the job that you're applying for. So it's likely self-evident, but if you're applying for a teaching focused position, really spend time, engaged, critical focused time on your teaching statement, on thinking about inclusive mentorship and inclusive pedagogy and classroom practices. It might be useful to spotlight an inclusive teaching life cycle. This is work by my colleague, Crystal Nazal, thinking about the design and development of a course, right? Before you even teach, bringing equity mindedness, inclusion into the course, then the implementation of the course, and then afterwards reflection and revision. And of course, those applying to research-oriented spots should spotlight culturally responsive scholarship, and again, your future plans. And the field of psychology is also increasingly moving beyond just group outcomes and psychological group differences and psychological outcomes to also spotlight structural and systemic issues that lead to group differences. And so this is also an important piece to layer into our description of our future work. So to lead us into a discussion about the specific components, I'll turn it over to Viji.
Before we move on to the next slide, I forgot to say one advantage of framing your statements the way I was promoting, with naming specific initiatives at the university that you're applying to. And I only wanted to jump in and add it because I'm looking at what's coming up in the chat window. One of the advantages of doing this is if you're applying to an institution that really doesn't prioritize DEI to the extent that you do, if they have some efforts on campus already taking place that maybe the search committee isn't even aware of, by showing that you have a role to play in those initiatives, that you can bring their program and their department into what's happening elsewhere on campus, that you're showing what you can add to the puzzle that's their department, that you have something to contribute in that manner, and help them connect to the rest of their institution. So this is a good way to frame things, even when you care about DEI, maybe more than the search committee that you're applying to work with. So that was just one more advantage I wanted to highlight before we move on to Viji's next slide. Thank you.
Okay, so now comes the exciting, I think one of the exciting parts of this is to get your feedback. As you noted, we're just proposing this draft as a way to sort of crowdsource some ideas, but we would love for you to contribute to the document. This is our inclusion aspect of this work, is to be thinking about what are you thinking about in these areas. And we want to do this in this collaborative way on Zoom. And I know many of you have used Zoom a lot and are very comfortable with this, and some of you may not be as comfortable with this platform and other platforms. So just as a reminder, you're going to be put into a breakout room. And what we're going to do is I'll paste it into the chat window, but we're going to send you to this link, this form that's here, or you feel free to type it in. But this link is a Google form where you can contribute your ideas for the different areas. So you will have access to the handout, which is, again, it's a draft proposal of ideas, as well as a Google form for your small group to be thinking about contributions to add to that document. And we will collate some of those responses. We're going to come back together after about 10 minutes of discussion in your breakout rooms. We'll come back together, have a brief discussion, and then our committee will take some time to sift through the responses and add to the document. So the goal is that we're all contributing to this as a function of being together in the same place and same time. So I'm going to place you in the rooms, but before I do that, I want to make sure that you have access to the links.
I think Jen pasted it into the chat.
I just pasted it. There, you'll see the form for submission and feedback is right there. Or there's another version too. Go just now. So one of those two.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Oh, that's the handout. Okay.
So please take a moment to just say, who you are, where you're Zooming from, and then we would love for you to appoint somebody in the group to log the responses in the Google form. Not everybody in the group has to do it. Only one person needs to log, but we're hoping you'll take a look at our list and add to it. And you can jump around. You don't have to stay in the teaching domain. You can move to mentoring, but just fill out a form per area that you're going to be discussing. And all of these instructions will be available to you in the form. So if you get to the room and you're not sure what to do, pull up the form and you'll see the instructions listed there. Are there any questions before I send you off? Okay, so you're going to have about 10 minutes there. And if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand in the room. Somebody will pop in and you'll get a 1-minute warning to come back. Use that minute to wrap up your ideas, and then you'll automatically get pulled back to the main session.
Oh, one thing, Viji, before you let people go, someone asked in the chat about view access to the doc. That's deliberate so that we don't have tons of people editing one thing. So view only access to the doc is for your reference right now. Any ideas you have go in the form. We'll share those with each other, and then we'll clean up the doc and then send it back out to all of you so you have an updated version.
Great. And if for some reason you get to a room and you find you're the only person in that room, or the other person can't join for whatever reason, pop back into the main room and I'll put you into another room. Okay, here we go.
Did you add someone in the waiting room if you can put them somewhere? A couple people.
I don't see anyone in a waiting room.
Oh, I just admitted them. So now they're, sorry, my bad. They're in the main session now, but need a home.
Okay. All right. Would that be Heather and Mary?
Uh-huh.
Okay, great.
I came back out of my room just because I feel like I should stay here in case something happens ACT-wise.
Okay.
Makes sense. I pulled out because I was with Dina, so you can feel free to assign me somewhere else or however.
And Mary, it may be because you're joining not in a Zoom platform, but I'm not able to add you to a room. So feel free to use that link that's in the chat window and review the document on your own if you'd like.
Oh, Vigi, one last thing, last request for you, because I can't see as a co-host. Is it possible, can you manually put me in the room with Marianne Lloyd? I told her I would come and answer a question that she had.
Yes, hold on one second. Let me just set the timer.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You needed to go into the room with Marianne, you said?
Mhm.
And you can shut me off any place as well.
All right, I see which room Marianne is in. I'm going to move you in there now. There you go. And then let me see if we have a room that's a smaller size, or doesn't have a facilitator in it. Okay, I see a place.
Okay.
Vigi, did you want to pause the recording now, just because it doesn't matter, but it will just record us sitting here while they're in the Zoom. So,
Yes. I actually, if it's okay, I'll leave it going because I don't trust myself to remember to resume the recording.
That's always my answer, but Jordan's really good about remembering, so I always try to give people the option.
We'll just make sure we don't say anything too salacious here.
When we're also live on YouTube, I haven't actually clicked over there to see if there are people watching. Hey, YouTubers, sometimes people who would prefer to have a more passive experience, no judgment, will go over there because they learned really quickly that you end up in a breakout room in all of these sessions, and that may not be their interest or comfort. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if there are people who are viewing, and I totally understand, you know, especially if you're trying to get a few things done, if you want to just look at the document, you know, we have the short link available to you to just browse it. You're also welcome to contribute, and you can work independently that way if you would like to.
It says there are,
and if there are people who are viewing, and I totally understand, you know.
Wait a minute, sorry. Okay. There are, I was like, wait a minute, I hear Vigi's voice, but I don't see her mouth moving. That's because that was the YouTube stream. There are 6 people watching. Now, and there is a question in the chat there about whether or not they could get a link to the handout there. Do you want me to put that in the YouTube link? And now it's an unlisted link, so that people could only get there if they went through the whole ACT backdoor process. So
sure.
You want me to put those there? Okay, well.
Do you have those available to share?
I'll pull them out of the chat.
Okay. The other thing I can do is pull this document up. And it's the link that is at the bottom there. And in that link, you will find the link for the handout.
So Vigi, I think the session's going really well.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what happens in discussions and as people add. It would be great to figure out how to get once we feel like we have something we can share with a broader community, figuring out how to make sure it gets in the hands of people who actually need it.
Yeah. I suspect, I mean, I think Amy Feinberg wrote something in the chat about that. And as president, I suspect she might be quite keen to do the same.
Yeah, and I wonder too if there's a way to do some kind of a like a proceedings document or something that just allows this to be a publication of some sort that that could be cited for people. I think that would be helpful for some of our.
That would definitely be helpful for me. Yes, yes, that's an excellent idea. It's an excellent idea.
I wonder if you could talk to Erin Richmond with Teaching of Psychology, and not to give you guys more work, but because I don't think it would take much more than a couple of paragraphs to set up the document, but to publish it as, I can't remember, there's a new corner in the journal that really focuses on more like resources. And so it doesn't require like a ton of like deep situating in the literature. I mean, I can see you guys already doing that with all your hyperlinks, but you know, it's not like it's not an academic kind of thing. It's not set up to be that way. And I mean, I'm sure, well, I don't want to say I'm sure, I'm not gonna speak for Erin, but I feel like once he sees this, he would see, and the other editors would see that this is valuable and to get it out.
Thanks
and
for that
then you would have a
suggestion.
publication, and then so it would count for like all the ways.
Yeah. Thanks,
I like that.
Lindsay.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion.
I'm going to just stop the share for a moment and take a moment to look and see what the responses are looking like.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. We're seeing some good ideas starting to come in.
Nice. And so you'll be able to look at those as, okay. You're multitasking to the extreme.
Sometimes I feel like it's like a Star Trek like dashboard in my laptop, but it's all in one thing. So that's the only downside. What I really want is like 15 hoverboards like around. Just check the time.
Yeah, we should be coming up.
3 minutes left.
Okay.
If you're wondering, there were a couple of responses in the YouTube chat to the things that I posted. One person just said, haha, for calling me out for being a passive listener. Hey, Jessica. And then
no judgment there. No judgment.
Yeah, it's actually my graduate student who just said that.
That's awesome.
And then
that's something. That's
yeah. And then somebody else said, this has been a super helpful talk, by the way. Just wish it had been earlier this year before I started applying to jobs. Haha.
Understood. I know. I know.
You know, you say that, but sometimes I think it's a lot like when we work with our students, like it's after the first exam that the message lands a little bit differently after you made an attempt. So I think making the attempt and then recognizing where you might want to revise is helpful. I know we always think we want everything at the beginning, but sometimes it's good to take a stab at it and then revise.
Yeah. And this is information that will always be helpful as we move through our whole career life cycle.
Okay, I'm going to just broadcast a message to the groups to just remind them to be using the forms to log their ideas, and that will be coming back shortly. Okay, I'm going to begin closing the rooms. Oh, it didn't do a minute, it did 10 seconds. That was fast. Must be one of my settings.
That's a setting? I didn't know that was a choice. Oh, all right.
Yeah, I think when it got transferred to me, it was my default settings.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking some time to meet some of your colleagues across the way and to work on this document together. I think Dina's going to take us to the next slide. There you go. So we'd like to just take a moment to talk through what you saw in the document and any additions that you have. I floated along there inside to see what was getting submitted in the forms. But I'm wondering if you or somebody in the group who had some ideas to add, or maybe you saw something and you were maybe not sure why it was classified that way, or another theme that you might add. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind typing your name in the chat window to let us know that you might like to have, you'd like to contribute in some way. As well as if there's anyone who wouldn't mind giving us a short summary of maybe some of the things you talked about in your group, if you could put your name in the chat window as well.
We're feeling shy today.
I'll tell you what I tell my students, I'm not afraid of silence, so.
That's right. Say that too.
One thing I can add is I was talking to Amy, and Amy, either you can share or I'm really happy to. Whichever way. But I think one thing that we were really missing on the handout is a discussion around just universal access and issues around kind of like making the materials, making sure the materials meet all diverse learning needs. And so that was something that we talked about adding. And so I appreciate Amy bringing that up.
Great. Okay, so I see a few names in here. Jackie, would you mind sharing some things that came up in your group's discussion?
Sure. We talked about like the high school AP curriculum, intro psych, and kind of different levels of classroom activities, and that if individual teachers do like the diversity inclusion stuff in their classes, they may not be catching, no, what am I trying to say? Like they may not be consistent with other teachers' strategies, and so their students like might accidentally be getting more than other classes or less than other classes, depending on how the teachers are arranging the content.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you for sharing. I see a few names in here, but I'm not sure if they were offering to share something or affirming a previous comment. Is there anyone else who would like to share some discussion that came in your group? Oh, Rachel's saying that you'll share.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess we talked about a number of things, but one thing that was particularly salient to me as I wrap up my PhD schooling, I guess you could call it, is the lack of training for graduate students on these issues in any capacity. So on how to integrate maybe, for example, critical race theory in research, or how to properly treat variables so that you're not just throwing them in as moderator variables, but rather emphasizing them when the research question is appropriate. And also then in our pedagogical training. So I'm very fortunate to be in a program that does actually train its graduate students to teach. And though this might be like touched on in that course, it's certainly not an emphasis in it in any way. So I just think overall graduate programs could be doing a much better job of at least introducing any of these ideas so that by the time you are applying for jobs, you know to talk about any of these things in your job application. So
that's right. And what you're pointing out is really great, that I mean, sometimes we just need the words and the ideas to be articulated so that we know what to aim for, right? And that's where I think it's helpful to be doing this brainstorming together as a group, as you are thinking about what you're doing in your areas, that we're really sharing that with the community so that they have more language, they have more tasks, they have something to strive for if they're not necessarily doing it right now. So I think that's a really helpful point to share, that in our training, we could be doing a better job of preparing future faculty, or if you're going into industry, wherever it is that you're going to be going, to be attuned to the kinds of things that you could be doing in this area.
I see Jackie wants to speak, and then Jennifer.
I think Jackie may have spoken already, but Jennifer.
Okay, yet another Jennifer. There are always many of us. So in our group, we actually talked more along the lines of being the committee members on a search committee looking at applications. And one of the things that I brought that I don't necessarily have a solution to was, my school is a very small school in a very homogeneous small town area. And it's not for lack of wanting a diversity of applicants. We don't typically tend to get people. And then when we do get people, it's hard sometimes to determine what their commitment is to diversity. My university has been really good at including that, but I'm open to other people's thoughts. We talked a little in our group about different things you can look for and questions and things like that. But that's really the challenge that we've had. We have a very diverse student population, but we want them to see representation among their faculty and the administration. And we've done that to some extent, but there's more to do. But it feels like every time we put out a job ad, we're not getting people in. So that's where we're at. We kind of talked from the people on the committee level of things.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we appreciated the fact that people would be coming to this session from a variety of perspectives. So that's why it's helpful for you to be thinking about this document and the utility of it. So Tassilo, do you mind just wrapping up some thoughts, and then maybe we could just open it up to questions and general comments?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and to again piggyback on what you just said, Viji, I appreciate hearing these different perspectives. So both thinking about where you are teaching, right? High school, community college, traditional college, some other kind of institution, professional school, thinking about different levels. So the training level for grad students, and then what instructors, teachers, and researchers are, how we're being trained, and then also the institutions themselves and the degree to which their practices, both recruitment practices, but the importance placed on equity and inclusion, how there are barriers there. So I think this is really, really rich discussion that could certainly go on for a long, hours. But I appreciate these multiple perspectives in coming to this content. But yeah, at this point, we'd love to open it up for questions of any kind, including kind of discussion questions for us to chew through as a group.
Really quickly, in our group, this is Felicia. What we discussed was how we're new, or my school is new to starting a DEI committee. And Aries and Jessica and myself, we were discussing that we believe that this helps to create a safe space for our students specifically at a lot of schools and make them feel welcome. However, Aries brought up a wonderful conversation in stating that having these committees actually causes or could cause divisiveness. This is what some may believe. And if Aries wants to speak more on that, he's more than welcome to. However, what we came to the agreement on was that not discussing a DEI statements, discussions actually causes more divisiveness. Had we been having these conversations or committees in the past, possibly as much divisiveness that exists right now, or for some of our students or faculty and staff to feel as if they're not in a safe space when it comes to retention and recruitment and feeling like they belong. Had we had these conversations before, that probably would not be in existence. Thank you so much for the presentation that you provided. I really enjoyed it, as well as my conversation in the breakout room.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Felicia. If I could chime in, Eris, I just wanted to clarify really quickly. It was a reference to the Donald Trump executive order to ban any racial sensitivity training, any implicit bias training, and ban all federal funding for those purposes. And I'm a professor at Penn State, and we get federal funding. And we were told that should he win again, that we may have to put an end to all our efforts on DEI and such, because in their view, this is what is racist, this is what is divisive, and this is what is hurting America right now, having these conversations. Not my views, but what the executive order is meant to communicate, to not allow us to do these, to have these conversations.
Thank you, Eris. Yes, I've read the executive order in detail because it was shocking, and it is having a chilling impact already. And there, it's an interesting document to look at, because there are ways that it's worded that are not capturing actually what DEI training is actually saying. But thinking about the implications, right, for institutions, while to Felicia's point, we recognize that these conversations and movement are absolutely critical for institutions of higher ed, for the training of citizens to go out into the world, for research and scholarship that is nuanced and that reflects actual lived experiences, for mentorship and the creation of pipelines for communities that have been underrepresented in psychology. We can see how critical it is to have the conversations at first, to spark changes in our institutions at both at individual, interpersonal, institutional levels. And it really requires all of those levels. So I really appreciate both Felicia and Eris's points.
Can I add something to that real quick? And this also is related to something that my little breakout room talked about, is the idea of correcting misconceptions, whether they are espoused by your students, by your colleagues, wherever, because there are common lines, right? Divisiveness is one of those lines that you might hear from students, colleagues who are resistant to talking about racism, sexism, anything, right? That being said, I'm not going to touch on the executive order portion. What I will touch on is how to maybe correct someone with data in this way. In case anybody has not already seen this, this is a relatively new paper. I'll put it in the chat, but it's an incredible series of randomized controlled trials that basically shows that when students believe that diversity is an important value to their institutions, to their professors, in their classrooms, everything, all students stand to benefit, be it in different ways. So students who are more marginalized, we see the achievement gap reduce. We also see for students who are with more social power and more social privilege, they tend to have a greater appreciation of diversity rather than they had before, right? So there are a bunch of different benefits, again, albeit in different ways for different groups, but it doesn't support the any kind of, and it's a common line, but something I found that's effective in my teaching is, and we talked about this in my breakout group, is
when you have data that you can show people and say, I'm sorry, this just objectively like is not true, and say it gently. That seems to be an effective persuasion technique. So I put the paper in the chat, highly, highly recommend it if people haven't seen it yet. It's so good.
Are there any other questions, any other thoughts spurred from your small group discussion or from what we've been talking about in the last few minutes?
There's a question in the chat. Can we talk about how to get others to have the same level of urgency and importance to issues of DEI, besides yelling and swearing, which doesn't seem to be effective? Does anybody want to tackle that one?
I'm happy to turn it over to other folks. I have my thoughts about this, but happy to turn it over to other folks in the group. Okay, let me jump in. I think the short answer is that it's actually very, very hard. So I think inherent to DEI work and highlighting its importance is the recognition that the structures of institutions of higher ed and systems in general are often very resistant to change, even for things that that are as important as this. And there are often institutional barriers that exist. It takes, right? We can think about this either as a top-down or a bottom-up process. So leaders who are truly ready to push the forefront in terms of what equity actually looks like in practice can lead an institution in that direction. There's also right now, the power of student voices is tremendous and universities are starting to listen. And I think collective action and advocacy from students with faculty, allies and supports can actually start to create real change in an institution. So those are the two main ways I see from the research and from some of my own experiences to facilitate change.
Yeah, I would add in, first of all, I just want to reiterate the importance of what Tasita just said about utilizing the student voices. I think sometimes when administrators aren't willing to or open to hearing it from us, they may be more open to hearing it from the source of their funds, those tuition dollars. So yeah, I want to reiterate that. But also on a one-on-one sort of level, when you're talking to someone who may be not even, just on a minor level, not even understanding the significance of DEI, not understanding some of the microaggressions they may be engaging in, and the way they're not acknowledging the issues of DEI in an everyday situation. I've had the privilege of being sort of in a bridging situation. I'm first generation Mexican American, but I'm also very fair skinned. And so sometimes I have the advantage of being a face and a voice that people who don't acknowledge enough these DEI things are more willing to listen to. And the best way I've been able to get through to people sometimes is by speaking about my own issues that I've had to overcome. When the times when, and the committee knows that I talk about things like this, that the times when I've been confronted with my own biases, with my own issues that I've had to confront and change, and the difficulty that I've had with that change, but the importance of engaging in that change myself. And when they see themselves mirrored in that, when they realize, oh, you know what, I say those things, or I've done those things, then it can open a conversation. So I usually start with talking about, the things I've noticed about myself that I needed to change, rather than saying, here are the ways you need to change. It really served as a better conversational opener. But I have that privileged position of sort of being with one foot in each world.
had one last thing. We're coming up on time, but one last tip that hasn't been mentioned yet when it comes to getting people to care is think about, I guess this is a general strategy I use both with my students and in terms of broader institutional advocacy work, is to meet people where they are. So I'm nearly positive in some form or fashion, in some kind of mission statement somewhere, your universities have said something related to diversity in some way, that they value this in some way, might have used different language, but you'll find it somewhere. Use that language to your benefit anytime you are promoting something, advocating for something. Say, this is a very clear way to use better language, but this is a very clear way to put your money where your mouth is, right? This is a reflection of the values that you say you hold. Let's work on this together, and frame it in that way. So it's not like you're some random person just asking for these ridiculous things, because they're not ridiculous. They're things everyone should care about. And your university, to some extent, has already put this in writing. Remind them of that.
Yeah, to tie what you just said back to application materials and promotion materials. If you haven't heard this tip before, it's really a significant tip when it comes to applying for jobs, right? Echo the language you see in a job post, right? If they're looking for X, Y, and Z qualities, make sure those are the buzzwords. You don't want to be cliche in your application materials, but if there's ever a time to use buzzwords, it's the words that you see in an ad posting. Same can be said for those diversity initiatives. When I said, to talk about the diversity initiatives you see at a university and mention those in your materials about how you can contribute to those, absolutely bring up the exact language that they say in their mission, in their statements that they have about diversity. Use their same words, not against them, but to show that this is how you can help them realize those things they say they value.
Well, I know we are at time, and Amy Feinberg, I just wanted to note that I would love for this conversation to keep going in STP. I can feel that there is a desire and a need for these conversations, and I would absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you very much to all of you for participating and for coming today. If you have any follow-up questions, any thoughts for any of us, please feel free to get in touch with us. But thank you very much. We thoroughly enjoyed this session today.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
I'm hanging just in case people hang for questions. It's what I do with classes.
I did stop the recording, just so you know.
Okay, good.
Oh my God, I tried so hard to keep my face as neutral as possible during the discussion of Trump's executive order. At first I started to respond, and then I was like, this is on a recording. It can be used against me. I'm just going to stay neutral.
Oh, you're a better woman than I am.
I can't even be neutral. I'm like, how I feel about this.
I am so a person who my face shows everything. So, but because as a cameraman, I can see what my face is showing for once.
While we're on this topic, I didn't tell anyone to go do a crime. Please praise me for my restraint. I didn't say to break the law because laws are unjust.
Yeah, no, I normally show everything on my face, but it's a different world, this world.